The Macabre World podcast is brought to you by Darker Art Studio, home of real human bone jewelry. Stock and custom pieces are available, so visit us on the web at www.darkerartstudio.com and show them your darker art side. Macabre World, a podcast from Darker Art Studio, where we explore the dark, strange, and unusual from this world and beyond. Hello and welcome to the Macabre World podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Digati, and with me today to unlock the power of the mind is John Moyer. John, thank you so much for joining us.
I am grateful to be here with you all the way in Mulligan Hill from my old stomping ground.
That's crazy. John and I were chatting just before we started, and I'm here in Mulligan Hill, New Jersey, and John is in, of all places, just out the Salt Lake City, Utah. John is from here.
Yeah.
John grew up right here, and as some of my listeners know, I'm not from here.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Bristol, Rhode Island, so we just got real cosmopolitan real quick. So, John, when did you take up hypnosis? You're a very successful hypnotist. You're a stage hypnotist. You're a comedy writer, comedian. When did hypnosis enter the picture?
It's kind of weird because I've got this really kind of long and winding road of getting here. I mean, it's been a blast ever since. But I started doing hypnosis probably in about 2011 2012, and so for about the last 10 years, and that's when it just accelerated everything that I was doing previous to that. I mean, I was having kind of a good time, but man, hypnosis just kind of ignited things, and I've just been doing it ever since, and it's been great. My only regret is I wish I started doing it sooner.
Now, a lot of people, and I was one of them, I've recently started to look into hypnotherapy and hypnosis, and I've taken some courses. Now, a lot of folks, I think, at least I did, I'm picturing, and I was very disappointed to learn that when you hypnotize people, this doesn't happen. Bugs Bunny and the spiral eyes and all of that stuff. I think we all picture this loss of control, this sort of psychotic commanding of doing crazy things, and, and then you can get, and a lot of this is a huge myth that I think I definitely want you to talk about. People think they can get stuck in a trance.
Yeah.
If only.
Yeah.
It's really, that would be very handy for me. But
then watch what's that Apple show? The I got to remember the name of it now, where they erase your memory and you go to work, and when you leave work, I got to remember the name. I'm not going to waste time on it right now. But yes, people have a lot of misconceptions about hypnosis, and it's funny on my YouTube channel. I will get people that are like, "This is demonic. This is satanic. Don't listen to this," and it's just based in, people just not having an understanding of it. So, cover a couple of your things. One of the big things is, you cannot get stuck in hypnosis. And, people are like, what happens if I get stuck there? No, you're not. And I have to explain that. Typically, I will only, like when I give a pre-talk and I'm doing a show for audiences, I only have to take the time to explain that to like high school kids or college kids. And the reason why particularly I have to do it to that, because I know it's not going to happen, but inevitably you might get some kid that goes, man, I'm gonna hog all the limelight tonight for the grad party. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna pretend I'm stuck and have everybody freak out, but it doesn't happen. So if somebody gets hypnotized and I would walk away and not be there anymore, one of two things would happen. They're either gonna fall asleep, like they're taking a nap, or they're just gonna wake up. So yeah, you're not going to get stuck. Not going to happen.
Well, I did see, I think the first time I ever saw a hypnotist, there was a very popular hypnotist in the southeastern New England area growing up in the 70s and 80s, Frank Santos. And Frank Santos's shtick was he was the R-rated hypnotist. So my association with comedy hypnosis is a bit salty and silly. And he did shows that were family friendly as well, because I first saw him in high school. And then later on, when I was old enough to get into the more bars, we're talking about bars that he would play in comedy clubs, I saw the more full bore Frank Santos. And Frank unfortunately left us a few years ago, but a lot of folks do know his name. and have heard of his show and that style of hypnosis. So I
Mhm.
think most people, if they're not thinking of cartoon and movie images, they're thinking maybe if they've seen something that was done for entertainment and may not be aware of the benefits
Yeah.
of hypnosis and with neuro-linguistic programming.
Mhm.
And I was looking at your website, and we're going to be saying this, and there's going to be clickable links, and I can't stress this enough. John Moyer, JohnMoyer.com, and also John Moyer Hypnosis YouTube channel. Some of the most amazing things you're going to hear today are at your disposal whenever you need them, which is, I think, a fantastic service. Thank you for that, John.
Thank you.
It's there's a lot going on. John Moyer, before hypnosis personally and after hypnosis, did it change your life?
Yeah, it did. Before, well, yeah, I'd spent 20 some odd years doing stand-up comedy, and that was my passion, that was my art, and I almost had this romance with the idea of the starving artist, right? You're so committed to your art, and you're out there and you're performing, and I don't care about money, I don't care about whatever, and all my most important thing was like, I just want to be able to have enough to get by and just do what I love and not have to answer to the man, right? That was kind of my whole thing. And it was working out fairly well for me to that mentality. But the challenge was, it's like 2010, I wound up going through a divorce, and I, my kids were little, I think I had like a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And of course, being a single parent, and then, I'm still dating the wrong women and the dysfunctional women, and you're doing crappy bars, and I was 40 some odd years old, and you're just like, is this it? Is this as good? Man, this sucks. And I was kind of in a dark place. I wasn't happy, and the whole thing for me was, especially because I went to theater and film school, and when they teach about screenwriting in theater and film school, the whole thing is that all conflict is drama. Right? You're not going to have a movie Home Alone if the kid's not A, stuck home alone, and B, there's bad guys trying to break in the house. So I kind of took that template and applied it to my life. I'm like, dysfunction is drama, which is conflicts, which can equal comedy and be funny on stage. So I was kind of a really angry comedian. And so it was like, the more dysfunction there was in my life, the funnier I could be on stage. But then, of course, my personal life, was a disaster. And what happened for me, and we can get into the story how I got into hypnosis if you want, but once I started doing that, everything professionally took off for me. Instead of driving 12 hours to some hell gig, and somewhere in like Montana for a bunch of drunk cowboys where they were going to put me up in a Motel 6 for the night, I'm getting flown first class, and I'm doing high-end corporate gigs. And then I got to perform for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. And from the stage hypnosis is when my YouTube channel took off. And so professionally, I was doing great. And then I started to apply the concepts that I was doing with hypnosis to myself, and realized that, man, I changed how I thought. I changed my perspective and, my emotional states. And suddenly I was happy personally. And then, of course, once I felt like I was in a happy place, I had nothing more to be angry about. I had no more need to do stand-up comedy. And then it was just all hypnosis from there.
Well, speaking of your YouTube channel, you're too nice to brag about it, but I will. You've got over 250,000 subscribers.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
and that's extremely impressive. And I enjoyed that you called them higher vibers.
Higher vibers. Yeah.
And the thing is that if one only is saying, well, is this guy for real? That anybody can make a YouTube video and all that stuff. Is they could always, of course, look at your credentials on your website and research a little bit of that. But something that really made an impression on me was I read the comments, and it must be so gratifying in a higher vibe kind of way to hear so many people say, you know what, this really helped me. You're really helping people, and they're being very open, and there's a very nice tone to everything where people are sharing how they're sharing their struggle, they're sharing their triumph, and you've created an amazing community with your YouTube channel.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, it's something I'm really passionate about. And I never expected it to be that way, and as it just kind of evolved, and then you hear from people, because, and it's more, of course, it's more than just YouTube comments. People will email me, people will,
Sure.
Direct message me. And yeah, you hear from people. I hear from people that just, I'm like, holy cow, right? I had the ability to take the experience of my life, the drama in my life, and how I was able to turn things around and put it out there and share it with people and have it benefit them. And that, that was my whole thing as an artist, right? As a comedian, anything that I did artistically, for me, it was about being able to share something with somebody. Years ago, when I was doing comedy, I worked with a comedian named Jack Mayberry. And at one point, I think he had more appearances on The Tonight Show than, any other comic had. And Jack said to me, when you tell a joke, it's like giving somebody a gift, right? You're packaging something up and then you're giving it to them, you're sharing it to them, and it's something special for them. So it's giving a gift. So I've always kind of had this, romanced notion of this idea of being able to take this completely intangible concept, in my mind that strikes a chord with me and resonates with me. And then I can then package that in a form artistically, share that with somebody else. And then they're able to take what's inside of me and feel it inside of them. And that's kind of the, my ethereal artistic perspective. But, whether I'm telling a joke or just making somebody laugh, or I'm doing something like this, it's meaningful to me. And of course, doing something like the hypnosis is obviously more meaningful, because it's not just making people laugh for an hour, even during the hypnosis show. It's not just making people laugh and be entertained for an hour. It's something that's going to last with them. And that just means a lot to me.
It's invaluable. Now we speak plain English here. So how does John, who just got out of his shitty marriage and had his shitty gig and at some shitty bar and all of that, how does hypnosis happen? I mean, you're in this rut, admittedly.
Right.
Again, I'm rather direct. You're in this rut.
That's fine.
So you're in this shitty rut, and and do you just like wake up one day and go, I got it, I'm gonna hypnotize me? How did that happen?
To qualify something, my first marriage, that was the shitty marriage. It was my second marriage to my kid's mom. I have nothing negative to say about my kid's mom. In fact, we're still good friends. It was just that, I was just kind of a shitty person. But the joke in my family is third time's a charm.
I didn't say it was her fault.
It's not her fault. No, it wasn't a shitty marriage. I was just a shitty person. But my wife now, third time's a charm in my family. It all worked out. That's part of, the evolution of my change. But I was going back to that. Rephrase your question for me. How did I go from the one to the other? Is that what?
How did you go from being in a rut and, like you said, feeling angry about, no doubt, the negative feelings that were around you that you generated, and what was the deciding factor that made you say, I'm going to become a hypnotist?
So what happened for me, and of course it's kind of weird, like, of all the things that have evolved in my life, I always kind of think if it was just a coincidence, there would have to be like 87 things that would have to align to be coincidental. But what happened for me is I was performing stand-up comedy, and it was an ongoing event throughout a day, and there was multiple events happening at this venue. So I was doing my stand-up show, and for the venue that I was in, maybe it was like half, 3/4 full. Yeah, it was okay, right? But what I didn't realize is that after me, they had a hypnotist doing a stage hypnosis show. And first of all, comics hate the hypnotists. They hate stage hypnotists. They do, because when you're a comic and you take yourself very seriously, you look at the stage hypnotist as gimmicky, it's hacky, it's not original. And I think what we would really get pissed off at as comics is you'd go and do a comedy club, maybe the weekend, half full, 3/4 full, whatever the case may be. And inevitably somebody would go, man, yeah, we had the hypnotist here last weekend. We sold out every show. We had an ad show. So comics always resented that they could never get butts in the seats. But the stage hypnotist, man, everybody loved it. Everybody talked about it. Everybody showed up for it. So here I am at this event. I get done with my show. I see that they have the stage hypnotist. And for my comedy show, maybe, half full, 2/3 full. For the stage hypnotist, standing room only, it was packed. And I stuck around and watched this. And not only was it packed and people were responsive and people rushed this stage to be volunteers, then after the fact, he's selling, his CDs for sleep and this and that and the other thing. And everybody's throwing money hand over fist to buy his products. And I said to myself, I go, damn it. All right. I know that I got to do something different. I can do this. This is something I can do. Of course, I only, needed to learn how to hypnotize people, but I had the stage presence. I knew how to be funny. I had really good improv skills on stage. So I dove in, and it took me a period of time, probably about a year, maybe, before I actually felt comfortable, with doing the show. But once I did the show, the advantage that I had, as opposed to other guys or girls or women or whoever you want to refer to them as starting out, was that I had years worth of contacts, bookers and managers and venues and all of these resources that I could go back to and said, hey, by the way, I'm now doing a hypnosis show. And then of course it just took off. And I was started to do, smaller venues. It was like the comedy clubs I was able to do, and, in bars and stuff like that. But then it grew to, I was able to go and perform at colleges, and I was able to perform, at high school. So my audience base was expanding. And then of course I was getting corporate gigs, like high-end corporate gigs that I could never do as a stand-up comic. Right. And then from that, I got onto, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. And so, that's just kind of how it happened. And it just accelerated from there. And then just as all of that fell into place, I changed. I was happier. I was better off. Wind up meeting, my wife, former Mrs. Utah, first runner-up Mrs. America. No, I did not hypnotize her to get married, to marry me, but yeah,
I think no matter who you are out there, I think people really underestimate how much leverage a gentleman who can make you laugh.
Well, you know what? And that's exactly, and it's funny that you should say that, because
I got my own funny guy, trust me.
and it's so true, because along the way, out of film school, I had a couple of comedy scripts that I wrote that were, independent films that were produced. And, I mentioned to you earlier, I graduated from BYU, and, even though I'm not practicing, Mormon anymore, I have nothing against the Mormon Church. But there was, for a period of time, there was a really strong Mormon genre of film. And I had written, I had 5 of my scripts produced that were sent to theaters, in predominant Mormon communities, and then DVD and all of that. And it was kind of weird, because my first movie was a movie called Singles Ward, and it was about a stand-up comic who gets married and gets divorced, and then has to deal with the craziness of dating as a Mormon, and blah, 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 blah. But these movies kind of became cult classics among the Mormons, no pun intended. So when my wife met me, and we're like texting the next day, and I just kind of started doing the hypnosis yet, but it wasn't official. But my wife goes, I don't even know what you do. What do you do? And I made a joke. I go, oh, just look at my website. That'll be easier to explain. And she's like, what? I'm not looking at your website. What do you do? And I go, do you know, I don't know if you were Mormon or not, but I did these Mormon comedies. My wife was like, oh my God, that was you. She knew all these movies. She saw all these movies.
Oh, that's great.
She laughed at all my jokes before she even met me. So yeah, that sense of humor won her over, and I make her laugh every day. So it works out.
Yeah, I feel very lucky. I'm with somebody who makes me laugh every day.
Yeah,
that's a big secret. So there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that are listening that are like, well, so how does the YouTube thing work? How can this help me? And I think everybody's got a chubby aunt. Maybe I'm the chubby aunt in my family. I'm not positive. Everybody's got a chubby aunt that went to a hypnotist for weight loss, and it didn't work. And I've been in Weight Watchers 9 times, and that aunt. And actually, they're out there. And it's so how does this work for a personal benefit? Because things that I think of, like, all right, Americans, and I'm including myself. So if anybody knows me, don't roll your eyes. And, a lot of us are overweight.
Uh-huh.
A lot of us are overweight because we stress eat, because a lot of us are stressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so things like stress. And a lot of us are in places where we're trying to become better people. We're trying to mature. We're trying to open our third eye. We're trying to do all kinds of things like that. And this is a method of helping you achieve those goals? How does that work?
The way it works, and what's interesting, because YouTube happened completely by accident for me. So the thing that was going on, it was hypnotists would sell their merchandise after the shows, but then of course people stopped having CD players, so there was no more, like, nobody would buy CDs anymore. So now all these hypnotists are arguing about, well, what are we going to do? How do we get, they're all coming up with ideas. We're going to sell MP3 files. We're going to put out thumb drives. We'll sell thumb drives and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I'm just going to put stuff on my website, then I'll put it on YouTube, and maybe people hear it YouTube, they go to my website, they buy it. Didn't even occur to me that people would use YouTube as the platform to get all this stuff. And then YouTube is really interesting because it's all about dialing in a very, very specific subset of viewers, right? Not broad viewers, specific viewers. So originally my content was stop smoking and weight loss and, reduce stress and et cetera and so forth. But then I had one program that really took off for sleep. And of course, but I was interested in doing more things than just sleep hypnosis. So I created a few things that people could fall asleep to and then listen to while they were sleeping. And then it kind of evolved into some more, new age stuff, positive energy, shielding yourself from negative energy, which all of this stuff is actually really just normal day-to-day things that people go through. They're stressed, right? They're dealing with some idiot, family member, some idiot boss, or they're panicked about their finances, or normal day-to-day things that people are upset about. I take that and kind of phrase it and put it and package it in a way that somebody's subconscious mind is going to benefit. So with what I do, well, they simply put it in, my listeners tend to listen to it when they climb into bed. And then as you fall asleep, you're passing through what they call alpha and theta brainwave states. So you're going through a hypnotic state anyway, as you're falling asleep. So they can listen to it as they fall asleep. And then the stuff plays at night. And I realize a lot of people, they don't want something to play in the background while they sleep. My subscribers like to have something. They tell me, oh my God, I wake up and I hear your voice and I fall back to sleep. But it's just a matter of listening. That's really what it is. And repetition is the mother of skill. So the nice thing about listening to content like mine online, you don't have to go anywhere and you can listen to it as much times as you want versus having to go someplace where somebody says, if I have to go to an office and meet a hypnotist, there's a lot of pressure, I'm stressed, this better work, whatever the case may be. But when you can just listen in the comfort of your own home and your own bed, you can be more open and more receptive to it. And the thing that I tell people is, what works for some person may not necessarily work for something else, but there's so much content there that you can explore. You can see what resonates with you, what doesn't resonate with you, and then just listen, and then you'll notice the benefits.
I think that it's interesting. I when you look over the website, the YouTube channel, some of the stuff you'd expect to see about anxiety, and we mentioned weight loss, and basically, I think it's important to say that these are things that help give people empowerment tools.
Yeah, that's really what it's all about.
Forward the change. Yeah. But one of the things, and we are at Macabre World, and we do talk about things that are a little strange and unusual, besides me, and there are several videos about spirit guides, psychic abilities, and tell us how hypnosis can open. I use the open the third eye, and I just realized, and folks, you can't see this. He's actually wearing a hat.
Yeah,
with the open third eye. And I just realized when you dipped your head, I was like, oh, there you go. But folks, there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot of great stuff. And I think when folks are looking to go into the psychic realm, I think this is a really interesting way to get people receptive, and tell us how that works.
Well, and there's two parts to that, because you bring up it's funny, my spirit guide video, I think that's my most viewed video. And it's funny because it's one of my early videos, and I go back and listen to it. The way I mixed it, put it together, I'm like, I would never do it that way again. But the thing about the spirit guide video is do I come from a place that I literally believe the heavens are open and there's like an angel appearing in somebody's room to be their spirit guide? No. The place that I'm coming from is that the subconscious mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not when you experience hypnosis. It's like when you're watching a movie. Consciously, it's a movie and it's not real, but you might be having those physiological and emotional reactions. If it's a horror movie, you might feel nervous, you feel scared, and your goosebumps or whatever the case may be. So I take that concept. It was like, okay, if somebody's stressed, if somebody's anxious, if somebody's looking for answers in their life, if they're trying to figure something out, well, their subconscious mind has the ability to do that. So I just kind of create this illusion that the mind can believe they're connecting with a spirit guide who is basically giving them support, encouraging them, telling them that they can have confidence, that they can feel positive, that, they can feel stress-free, and all of the empowering qualities that people are looking at. Even if you don't believe in spirit guides or whatever the case may be, there are things that are going to benefit people in their everyday life. And it's going into the subconscious mind. Just happens to be, this is the story, that I'm telling the subconscious mind. Now, when it comes to things like the psychic abilities, I always tell, people that there's hypnotists work for whether or not you're a Newtonian physics person, meaning that you believe that you have to physically interact with something to affect change. Or there's the quantum physics law of attraction people that, if you come from that perspective, you can benefit too. Because the interesting thing is, the conscious mind processes about 7 to 10 bits of information per second, if you put it in the context of a computer analogy. The subconscious mind is processing somewhere around 20 million bits of information per second. So there's way more happening on a subconscious level. And the thing that I tell people is, how many times do you go to a seminar, you read a book, whatever the case may be, and you're like, yes, this information makes so much sense, and I'm going to start doing this, and it's going to change my life. And then a week later, you're back to doing, the same old habits that cause you failure. That's because it's not rooted in your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind, conscious mind goes, yes, this makes sense. The subconscious mind goes, of course this makes sense. Only for everybody else, not for us, because we're failures. We can't get anything right. Nothing ever works out for us. So why bother to try? So you're getting much more happening within the subconscious mind relative to affecting change with hypnosis. So if you're a law of attraction person, then more is happening in the subconscious mind, which is then creating more of an emotional, energetic response that's going to raise your vibration, hence the higher viber. And that energy is going to go out into the quantum field, and you attract what you're resonating, what you're vibrating. So that's how I look at it as far as how it's happening. You're changing somebody's subconscious programming, which then changes their emotional state, which then affects their energetic state, raises their vibration, and it goes out there.
Well, I've often said, that in sort of in the terms of organized religion, lack of organized religion, that the subjectivity of varying beliefs, and here at Macabre World, we respect all kinds, and no belief too, if that's your jam. That some people are going to feel like, well, if you tell a story of somebody had an encounter, someone's going to want to be a skeptic. Someone's going to believe it without question, which I'm not sure is always a good thing either. Yeah. And that, and then there's going to be lots of people in the middle, I guess, to put it in a comedic sense. So a Wiccan, an atheist, a Catholic, tune into your YouTube channel. Is there something for everyone?
Yes.
They walk into a bar.
There is. My sister's a Wiccan, by the way. I don't know if maybe you guys hang out on Halloween or however that works, but yeah, there is something for everybody, unless, of course,
I'm a universalist, actually.
Oh, okay.
In my world, I think everybody's got a little bit of the right idea, and to follow the general tenet.
It's true, because I think my philosophy is, if you look back, ancient humanity and ancient civilizations understood a lot about energy, and they understood a lot about the mind. And what happened is that as humanity advanced, they started to think more. They started to use their minds more to come up with ideas, solving problems, and it all became about thinking. And they fell away from, the idea of energy and how everything interacts. And then, of course, and if you look at, I think all forms of, various religions, it all kind of goes back to that initial idea. If you look at Christianity, have faith, and if you believe this can, this can happen. And, the idea of saying a prayer. And I think that's all goes back to things that we understood that kind of got watered down, that kind of got lost, that kind of got corrupted through various forms of man thinking relative to, organized religion. And of course, those people that rose to power wanted to be able to control the other people, and, things were told. And
then it
so,
got strong armed in history.
Yeah.
It became a tool. I've always said that you can pretty much take any mainstream religion and boil down the full real intent of it into one sentence. Don't be a prick.
Yeah. You're
as to why you shouldn't, what will happen if you do, who's telling you not to. That's all individual to it. The main message: don't be a prick.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, because if you're feeling good about yourself and you're treating other people, and you're not being a prick, then that's an energetic frequency that goes out there, and everybody benefits. But if you're like, I'm right and you're wrong, that creates a state of neediness. It creates a state of anger. It creates a state of hostility, and that's what leads to a lot of bullshit and a lot of wars and a lot of people.
Well, there's that old adage: do you want to be right or you want to be happy?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are right who are very unhappy.
Yeah, it's exactly. And it's so funny. My ex-father-in-law, my kid's mom's father, who, love him, got a great relationship, with my ex-in-laws. But it was so funny because this was when I was doing the Mormon thing, before I had any knowledge of law of attraction or anything, before any of that was even big. This was going back, I think, to the early 2000s. I was going through their stuff. My mother-in-law had some old book. It was like a really old book from the 50s. And it was basically law of attraction before they called it law of attraction. It was the same principles. And I'm like looking through this book and I'm reading it. It was the funniest thing, is my father-in-law looks at my mother-in-law, was like, why do we have that book? That's bullshit. Throw that book out of here. And I looked at my father-in-law. I'm like, wait a second. You think a book that says if I think about something, I can attract it? That's complete bullshit. But, you can go to, the Mormon temple. You can pray, to the God there, and that gets your answers prayer, your prayers answered, right? I'm like, there's a disconnect there. It's the same idea. It's the same concept. And it's just pretty funny how
prayers are the same as spells, are the same as, anything where you're putting in energy and intention. And I think, and I'd love to hear what you think of this. I think people, and this is just in general, are energy starved. I think we put out a lot of energy and don't really know how to get it back, how to replenish it.
Well, the thing is people aren't even necessarily aware of their energy. That's part of the whole thing. And they don't, they don't realize that, they look around and we're constantly told how to think, how to feel. And they look around and then they see all this stuff that we react to, we get upset about. We're putting that out there, and people don't even have a realization of how they can manage that and how they can control that and how that they can make that difference for themselves. Growing up in the 80s, the existential threat, it was like nuclear war, nuclear holocaust with, Russia. And then of course we go to the existential threat of climate change. We're probably, there's a lot of people that are trying to get back to the existential threat of, nuclear war. And then here's the other interesting thing that gets a little weird that we've only started to recently hear. You got people that are talking about the existential threat of aliens, right? I mean,
Can we beat them in hockey too?
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy that you would ever think that we would ever hear that now. But now you've got mainstream people, you've got people in the government that are like, I don't know what's out there. There could be an existential threat, which, I think is another excuse for give us more money and more power, because now we got to be afraid of the aliens. But to me, I think
to be fair, that anal probe thing sounds awful.
The existential threat isn't out there. The existential threat is in here. It's because people don't know how to manage their emotional states. They don't know how to manage their emotions. They don't know how to be able to align themselves in peace. So the existential threat to me from humanity isn't something that's going to happen to us. It's something that's going to happen because of what's going on with us on the inside. But now the flip side of that is I'm seeing more and more people realize that, and more people are tapping into their ability to manage their emotional states. And as they manage their emotional states, their energy shifts, their energy changes, they become more high vibrational. Then all of a sudden they're looking around and the world outside of them is showing up as a is a better reflection of who they are. Things are working out for them. They're happier. They're at peace. You know, they're meeting more people that are like them, and things are getting better. And I think if we do that individually and then collectively, we're going to look around and go, wow, we're doing pretty good. This is a pretty good place to be.
So just as every comedian has hecklers, everyone who puts any part of themselves out there is going to have criticisms and critiques. What's some of the challenges you faced in that area, and how do you handle it?
Well, probably the biggest thing for me is the fact, you know, relative to YouTube, because, you know, I'm putting myself out there to the entire world. And,
sure.
You know, when I was a stand-up comedian, man, I used to love to strike back at people, right? You heckle me, man, I'm going to go after you with everything. In fact, my wife used to say when she watched me do stand-up, her favorite part was when somebody heckled me, because I would just obliterate them. And I still have that, you know, I have to kind of keep that part of me in check. And of course, the majority of my YouTube views happen overnight.
Right.
So, you know, I wake up in the morning, do my meditation, I have my cup of coffee, and I'm like, let's see what people are saying on YouTube. And man, there are some times there. I mean, people will say some vicious things. You know, the nice thing about YouTube is that there's actually a held for review section.
Right. So
somebody can post a comment, and then the person who posts it can see it. They think it's there, but nobody else can see it. And then, of course, you can set up a whole bunch of parameters of words and things that'll go into the held for review section. So there's a lot of things that don't even make it publicly for other people to see, because
it's not relevant to your content.
Well, yeah, and I don't want there to be fights breaking out. I want somebody to get pissed off, and then that's like, you know, I will get a lot of comments from people like, "This is demonic hypnosis. You're inviting Satan into your life." And, you know, they'll post these long quotes of the scriptures and blah, blah, blah. And there's part of me that's like, fine, let that go through. But then there's just going to be a bunch of infighting and stuff like that. So it's like, I don't want to put that energy out there, because I'm not about that energy. But I get to read a lot of the stuff that people say to me. And, you know, it's like, I could do a whole thing of like mean tweets, you know, where people, you know, and you just, you know, yeah. So it's just, for me, I've had to learn to basically
to
do
just
the thing,
not give a damn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I love that.
Exactly.
I listened to that today.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. I've had to learn to be able to apply, you know, the things that I've been applying even more to my life that, you know, that I share with with other people. My wife will laugh though, because I will read the comments and I'll read them with emphasis, and I'll read them, you know, with certain, you know, I'll voice style or an accent or something. And my wife's like, is that how they sound? Is that what they sound like? Really? Is that, you know, but yeah, it's quite priceless, especially, you know, the people that want to tell me everything I'm doing wrong because they know better and they know it this way. And it just, if somebody has constructive criticism, it's like, I'm cool with that, but it's, you know, I can appreciate that, but man, there's people that just want to go right for the jugular.
And it sounds like they need to kind of like pick up your process more than anyone.
Yeah. There's part of me that wants to come back and say that. I'm like, no, that's not me. That's not what I'm all about, but I think it.
Sure. Well, we've all been there. But, you know, it's interesting that people talk about that it's demonic. I don't think, and this is, as I've been studying hypnosis, this is something I found extremely interesting, was the history of hypnosis. Now, everybody's heard the term being mesmerized.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't think, realize why that's capitalized.
Yeah. Yeah. It started with Franz Anton Mesmer, you know. Well, the really weird thing was that it was going on and people didn't really know what it was. And
it was used as anesthesia.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's crazy.
That was another crazy thing. Yeah, well, I was reading a book from probably about 100 years ago that was talking about hypnosis, and they were talking about you could put like a tube underneath your sleeve, and then you could have chloroform, and when you waved your hand over somebody,
like sort of a magician.
Yeah, like a magician thing. Yeah. And obviously, you know, hypnosis, it's been around. You know, the Egyptians knew about it, the Romans knew about it, you know, everybody, they knew about it. They didn't quite know exactly what it was. And then of course, when it came back into popularity with you know, like Franz Mesmer, he kind of had an idea of what he was doing, but he didn't know why it was working. And then, of course, that made to more challenges. There's a fascinating book. It's called The Illustrated History of Hypnosis. I don't know why you call it The Illustrated History, because there's only a few illustrations in there, but man, it's a fascinating book about the evolution of how modern man has kind of discovered hypnosis. It really is interesting. But yeah, you had Franz Mesmer, and then of course it went on. The name hypnosis is actually a Greek word that means to sleep, and it was coined by a Scottish physician back, I think, in the early 1800s, Dr. Braid, who thought people were actually falling asleep. So he called it hypnosis. And then, of course, they realized that it wasn't sleep. And then he had this idea to change it to monoideism, because you're focused on one idea. And of course, hypnosis had already stuck. So we're essentially calling it something it's not really is. But
when you see a stage hypnosis, and many times the command to induce someone is sleep.
Yeah, that is funny.
Because that's what it appears like, and I
there's-
think that's a lot easier to say.
Yeah, it looked like they were asleep. And really interesting, Charles Dickens was big into hypnosis. Really big. Yeah, he was big into hypnosis. And he had actually thought about taking up hypnosis as a professional career, but then he realized he would make more money writing, right? So he stuck with writing. But yeah, he was big into hypnosis. Some weird kind of things were going on with him in hypnosis. But yeah, and then of course gradually we understood more into the 20th century. It became an accepted modality of the American Medical Association, first the British Medical Association, but it is still that one thing that people just going to go, they kind of poo-poo, or it's the last resort. I've tried everything else, so I guess I'll try hypnosis. And the fascinating thing is that there was a study done, I think it was 10 or 12 years ago. People that went to, let's say, like a psychologist or a psychiatrist to kind of resolve some issue, there was I think it was a 33% success rate if they went, I think it was like 600 times. Whereas the people that went to a hypnotist had a 93% success rate after 6 times. So it's like that old saying, there's more money in treating cancer than there is actually curing cancer.
Right.
And it's interesting to kind of see how some parts of or even states, local communities fight pretty hard against people, hanging up a shingle and saying, hey, I'm a hypnotherapist. The National Guild of Hypnotists, which is the world's largest hypnosis organization, actually has a pretty aggressive lobby organization that stands up and fights for them, because there are places that are just like, nope, can't practice hypnosis here. And it's got nothing to do with spiritualism. It's like, hey, we're taking the money away from big pharma, or whatever the case may be. And yeah, I'm not ragging against, I'm all for people going to psychologists, like psychiatrists. Obviously, there's a fairly
progressive movement that people who are therapists and psychologists do suggest meditating.
Yeah,
I'm one of those people who couldn't meditate if I tried.
I used to think that too.
Well, unless you can do it with one eye open, staring at your watch, and guided meditation, which I would say guided meditation and hypnosis kind of really is almost two sides of the same coin.
You're exactly right, because when people think of hypnosis, they're like, oh, it could be something satanic or control. But then you say the word meditation, it feels so peaceful and inward.
The Beatles did.
Yeah, right. So whether you're calling it hypnosis or guided meditation or guided hypnosis, all these terms are interchangeable. And the reality of it is hypnosis and meditation are sister states of mind. The same thing is happening on a physiological and, a mental operational level between the two. One just sounds more scary,
I don't find it scary, but I guess maybe because I've always been inquisitive and knowledge is power. And it always, I think, helps it. But guided meditation and the hypnotic, I listen to just not give a damn. That's very good for me. So, and it is very much like in the vein of a guided meditation that was able to induce a calming in me.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm sitting someplace, even if the incense is fabulous and there's something, the new age music is playing, I still got one eye open. I'm just, I can't sit like a pretzel and I can't do it. But this was different. I think a lot of people think that they have to have some elaborate setup. You just put your phone right by your pillow.
Yeah.
And you're in your own bed, you're doing a comfortable thing and you just listen. And even if you say to yourself, you know what, this guy's putting me right to sleep. Well, good. Because then you're going to get some, and it really is a fantastic service that you provide for people. And again, you can just go right on YouTube to John Moyer Hypnosis. And there is a plethora of overnight and other.
Yeah.
Now, why would people think it's demonic? Is it that thing where everybody's afraid of everything they don't understand?
There's that.
That's just kooky.
Yeah. And then I think it kind of maybe also goes back to the roots of, we want to have control over people. So we have to tell them to be afraid of something. So if these people are actually doing something that empowers them, then, gosh, we're going to lose control over the people. Right. So, and I think people, there are people now that legitimately it believes, it's demonic and you're opening up satanic things. But I think that all has its roots in, well, if they're doing something that they can empower themselves and get by, then why are they going to need somebody else to take care of them, which is what we promised to do. Right. So they'll keep going to our church and keep giving us their money, and et cetera, and so forth.
Kind of how they treated Black Sabbath's first album as well. But, it is true. There is the sort of, so I definitely invite folks to check out the YouTube channel and check out johnmoyer.com. And what's next for John?
That's a good question. The last few years, obviously my YouTube channel has taken off, and, when the lockdown happened and everything, I had obviously I was performing full time at the same time too. And then all my shows went away, but it was still okay because I was able to hang out at home and I was making my YouTube videos and doing good. I have started to get back into performing now. So I'm getting myself back and I'm enjoying that. But at the same time, I also want to be able to capitalize on what I'm doing with YouTube, and it's more than just performing. So I have a book that I'm working on, as well as a keynote speech, so I can just kind of put myself out there. And then, of course, I've got some ideas for some more scripts too, not necessarily comedy scripts, but story ideas that are kind of aligned with kind of the way that my life has evolved. So I'm just going to keep enjoying creating and putting things out there that can benefit people.
That's fantastic. So anybody who wants to keep up with what's going on, find out what's new, can go to johnmoyer.com. Do you have a mailing list that they can join?
I don't, which is another thing that, my buddies are like, you really need to put a mailing list together. But yeah, all the portals to find me are right there on my website. You can find me on YouTube. John Moyer, not to be confused, of course, with the bassist from Disturbed, that John Moyer. So, because we do have the same name.
I don't think you're really risking it there.
I'm not, but it is funny because people will get us mixed up on like Twitter and Instagram all the time. Like,
yeah, that's true. Social.
There was 4 or 5 months ago, I got a notification on Twitter and it said, George Lopez mentioned you in a tweet. And I'm like, like the George Lopez? And I open it. It says, John Moyer's about to take the stage. And I'm like, this is really cool. But it was the George Lopez who was at some music festival or someplace, and John Moyer from Disturbed was about to take the stage, not me.
So we'll just call you Jersey John on this show.
Jersey John, cheesesteak John, soft pretzel
there
John.
Again, have to point out, everybody talks about the cheesesteak, but that pork sandwich is really quite something. That Philly roast pork is, I think, better than the cheesesteak. I think the cheesesteak, gets a little bit too much shine on that.
I'll try it the next time I'm back there. I'll squeeze in a pork sandwich with a cheesesteak and a hoagie from Wawa.
Wawa, the most dangerous parking lot in the world. They're insane. I think it's easier to navigate, like, one of those bridges that you see over between mountains in Thailand that are missing slats, than to get out of a parking spot in Wawa without, unscathed.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I think to wrap this up, I have to ask the one question that I'm absolutely positive is on everyone's mind. Are you still an Eagles fan?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. course.
We do have a lot of folks, even though that my podcast goes all over the place. We do have a lot of folks from Jersey, and I wanted to give them a shout out. So,
well, but I'm not one of the angry Eagles fans. And of course, the Eagles fans are great because no matter how bad the Eagles suck, right? The Eagles fans will still watch. They'll watch, but they'll scream and they'll yell. And, I'm like, the Eagles aren't doing good. I don't care. They won their one Super Bowl. I'm happy about that. So I can continue to live life.
Well, I'm originally from New England, so we won't talk about that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
John, it's been a unique pleasure. Again, everyone, please look up johnmoyer.com, and it's Moyer, and check out John Moyer Hypnosis on YouTube. John, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Macabre World. You can find us on the web at www.darkerartsstudio.com.